Let's talk about conditional statements. And often in code, you want to do some certain parts of the code or want to execute some parts of the code only in certain conditions. We can say that regularly the code is executed line by line. So we take the first line, then we execute the second line, and so on. So we can draw it as a simple, I don't know, book where we have lines, and we just execute the code starting from the top and going line by line. But in certain parts or in certain conditions, we want to skip maybe some parts or maybe execute some parts of the code only in certain conditions. For example, if there is no milk, we should order more milk. Or if the grass is too long and the weather is warm, we should cut the grass, and so on. To do that, in Python we can use if statement. Here is an example of an if statement, and you can see there are some lines of code. For example, print, and we assign a temperature to be 24, for example. And now we have a if statement. And if statement basically says that if there's a condition on this statement or on this line is true, then we execute the condition or the body of the condition, and if it's not, then we don't execute this code. We can draw it as this. For example, we the code execution follows this line, and now we are here where the if statement is written in the code. And now we have a decision to make. So we can basically say whether this condition is true. We do that, and if it's false, we do that. Currently what happens is that if it's false, then we don't do anything, and if it's true, then we execute some part of the code and we go back to this normal execution. We can say that. So for example, here we print out that we should mow the lawn. So because it's warm, we can cut the grass, and here we say that we should mow the lawn. So if we come here, if the condition here is true, then we follow this line, and if it's false, then we just skip this part and we just follow the code after the condition, and it just prints out done. So if the temperature would be let's say 10, then we won't come here and we just go directly to this done part. So yeah, if the temperature is above 18 in our example, then we go and mow the grass or the lawn. And the line here is printed out only if we go in this direction. So only if the if statement is true, only then we go to this part of the code. And if it's not, then we follow the false line here. As we can see that the body of this condition can be more than one line. Here we have additional actions we can do. We can go to swim, we can walk the dog, and so on. So we can have multiple actions we can do inside this inside the true condition. As can be seen on the screen, the lines are, the indentation is what shows that this all belongs inside this if statement. So the part here where we have the condition, everything which has those 4 spaces or indentation goes under this statement body. And the print done, which is the last line, this is outside of this condition statement body, condition body. So all those indented lines form a block of code or a block, and all the statements inside the block are executed if the statement is true. We can have a conditional statement inside a conditional statement. So inside this code we can also have an if statement. Basically it works the same. So first we check this statement. If it's true, then we start executing this code. If it's not true, if the temperature is 18 or lower, then we just skip all this part and go directly here. But if we go in, or the temperature is above 18 degrees, then we print out 2 lines, and then we have additional condition. So if the temperature is above 21, then we go swimming. If it's, I don't know, only 20 degrees, then we don't want to go to swimming, and we just mow the lawn and then walk the dog. So it's just an example. So basically what happens is that here we can also have a conditional statement. Let's say it's here, and we can say whether if it's true, then we execute some part of the code. If it's not, then we just skip this part of the code. And then the rest of the code would merge here. So basically the idea behind the statements is the same. It doesn't matter whether it's inside another statement or not, but basically every time we have a if statement, if the condition is true, then we follow the code which is inside the if body. If not, then we can just carry on the execution where we left off before the if statement. Now, the if statement also allows multiple choices. And what happens here is that basically there are different conditions, and we can execute one of those conditions. So let's draw it here. So we also have this temperature variable here. So the first thing we have is whether the temperature is above 21. So the condition is inside this diamond here. If it is, then we do something. So it's true, and if it's false, then we go here. But now if it's false, then we have additional condition if the temperature is above 18 degrees. Not very nice diamond here. If it's true, then we execute something here. If it's false, or we can say here we even don't have a condition, but here we have else statement. Else statement is executed if none of the above were executed. So let's say here is else. Just point out that it's because there is no condition, I don't have a point to draw this diamond here. I just point out that it's the else part. And what happens is that only one branch of this multiple choices can be executed. So if the temperature is 25 degrees, for example, then we come here and we just skip all those parts. That's the case if the temperature is 25. If the temperature is, let's say, 20, then this one is false. We don't come here, but we come here because it's above 18, and we skip the else part. If the temperature is, let's say, 15, then we skip this part because this is not true. We skip this part because this is not true, and we come here because in every other case we execute this part. And as you can see, all those codes or all those bodies in every branch have indentation also. And if I would have additional line in addition to this code, for example, this print done, which I had in previous slide, then this print done would be executed in every case if there is no indentation. So only one branch is executed. The conditions are checked in order. So basically we start from the first one. Then if it's already true, then we skip the additional checks. If the first one is not true, then we go carry on the execution, we check the second condition and so on. And from top to bottom, and if nothing is true and we have this else part, then we execute the else part. So yeah, and else is executed if none of the previous conditions were true. The else part is not required. As we had in this example, we only had this if statement and we didn't have else statement. What happens then is that in case the condition is false, basically nothing happens. In our example here, we have else part, and if the conditions are false, then we have additional body to execute. So the order of the conditions is quite important. Let's have the same example, or almost the same example as we had here. We have temperature, we have different checks, but with what we did, we switched those first two conditions. So first we check whether the temperature is above 21, then we go swimming. If it's about 18, we walk the dog, and in else or other cases we make fire. The idea behind the code might be the same, or it might be right, but actually if it's executed, it can work wrong. And let's see how it happens. I take the same values as here, but now if the order is different, then if the temperature is, let's say 20, then everything works as intended. So we walk the dog. So it's basically saying what happened here. But let's say that the temperature is 25. What happens here? Because we execute statements in the order from top to bottom, the first condition is true. So the temperature is 25, it's above 18, it's true. And then we walk the dog and we ignore the rest of the statements. So what happens here is that actually I would like to go to swim with a temperature of 25, but my code tells me to walk the dog. So that's important, that you have to always check the order of the statements. So if the first statement is true, then the rest is ignored. So you have to order those so that if, let's say, usually what happens is that in our case, we can say that we have different areas where we want to have something to be done. So let's say here it's basically 21, here 21, it's 18 here, and mathematically we could draw something like that. And everything here is let's make a fire, let's walk a dog, let's swim. And now we probably would like to order them from, let's say, from higher to lower. So here we can first check whether it's above 21. Then if it's not above 21, then we already know that this part is not true. And then we can only check whether the temperature is above 18. It might make sense that in this case here we can say that the temperature would be between 18 and 21. Actually 21 was included in our example, but the idea is the same, that to make sure that we are inside the correct area, or correct, like between 2 points of temperature, then we can have two conditions. So it should be above 18 and less than or less or equal than 21. But we ignored this part because the first condition here would already kind of take care of this part. So if it was about 21, then we would just ignore this one and there is no problem with that. And if this one was false, then we know that the value is actually somewhere left from this 21. But I mean, you can write the condition like that. You make sure that everything works as expected. If I would use the kind of the values in between, or I would use this kind of condition, even my code here would work. But then I would have to specify that temperature has to be higher than 18 and lower or equal to 21. And then if the actual value is 25, the first condition would not be true, and we would go on with the second branch. Yeah, the same is written here. So if the temperature is above 21, the first branch is executed, although we would maybe like to see that the second one would be executed. The if statement takes an expression which gives a result either true or false. We already saw this here. I drew true and false in different kind of cases. So if the condition is true, then something is executed, and if it's false, then something else is executed. In Python, true or false are written with a capital letter, so we can have a variable where the true is stored and so on. The true indicates a true condition and false indicates a false condition. And what are the conditions and some examples? So a condition can be, for example, 10 is bigger or larger than 5, greater than 5, and that is true. In Python, it would be written as true with capital letter. If we compare 5 to 5, then 5 is less than 5. This is false because they are equal. Strings and also numeric values are compared with two equal signs. So, for example, whether high is high. And we can use variable here also. So, for example, whether name is John, or what we did here, whether the temperature is above something or less or equal, and so on. The data type is Boolean. So what we can do, we can store this condition also in a variable. So let's say there is a variable x, and we just say that 5 is less than 10. What happens here is that first this part is evaluated, it is true, and now the true is stored in x. So, and I could write if x, then do something, print something out, and so on. So basically I can have I should have Boolean value here. It can be a variable, it can be a Boolean expression, and so on. So Boolean expressions or values can be stored in a variable. So for example, is raining is true. I can also write a variable is warm, and this is a conditional kind of variable. And if the temperature is above 18, I can say that is warm is true. If the temperature is 18 or lower, then this value for is warm becomes false. So before the assignment, the right side is calculated, so like any other assignment. So we just have to calculate or evaluate the right side of this statement. And in our case, it can be true or false, and this true or false is stored in a variable. So yeah, if the temperature is over 18, the right side becomes true, and also the is warm variable gets a true value inside it. And otherwise, the is warm becomes false. Boolean expressions. In addition to just checking one condition, we can kind of combine different conditions. And for example, if it's warm and it's not raining, then we got the grass. So as you can see, the and here indicates that we have one Boolean and another Boolean value, and if they both are true, then we can execute, or then the condition is true, and depending on the statement or the if statement, we can execute some code. And logical operators can be used to create expressions. The result of the expression will also be true or false. For example, if it's warm and it is raining, or for example, if it's not raining, not is also something you can use along with Boolean values, and or whether it is cold or it is raining, then do something. And let's see how those values affect or how the results of those different expressions is calculated.